Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mind Your Soul. And today we're talking about the connection between business and mental well being. This is something I haven't even seen it on any podcast episode before. And I think it's important to address because mental health is something of much importance. That's why I'm doing the podcast. And Benny I'm actually a fan of you, Benny, and he's a neurocognitive psychologist, and he's written two books. And which the first one, well, this one was sent to me. I'm so blessed to have it. Um, so he does multiple things. So Benny, please introduce yourself to the listeners.
Well, thank you so much. And first of all, I'm a big fan of your work as well. So that's
Oh,
that's part of the reason why I'm here. Well, it's actually the only reason why I'm here, probably.
I
So I'm
appreciate the reason.
yeah, my name is Benny. I'm a neurocognitive psychologist, and when I publicly introduce myself, I usually say if there's anyone, usually I say, is there someone here who is a neuroscientist? Because if not, I can say I'm a neuroscientist, which makes it easier to understand. If there are neuroscientists, of course, don't want to take anything away from them. I don't have that education, so then I have to say I'm a neurocognitive psychologist. So I have a psychology training, but I started really getting into the neuroscience aspects of psychology, and the
Mhm.
main difference being that neuroscientists, they really work on the brain, so they use animal models to do their research, meaning their participants, when they run an experiment, usually don't survive the experiment. I work on humans, so usually I don't kill my participants.
No, that's a
So
good
that's
thing.
that's the main difference. But generally speaking, like both neuroscientists and neurocognitive psychologists, we're both interested in how is the brain working, how does that relate to behavior, to emotions, to all this fancy cool stuff that comes with the profession. And in terms of affiliation, like when I introduce myself, so first and foremost, I'm a professor for psychology at the IU International University, where I teach general psychology and some introductory classes into psychology, neuromarketing, advertising psychologies, things like that. And I'm also a part-time senior manager at Deloitte Consulting, where I co-run the Deloitte Neuroscience Institute, where we try to bring neuroscience into business and really see the applications of neuroscience in the real world. And
Mhm.
that's always been close to my heart, like trying to
Mhm.
connect the academic side of things with the practicalities and the real world.
And that's the thing we have in common. That's why I think I
Absolutely.
connected with you because I was a fan of your work and now you're a fan of my work. So that's just like, wow, amazing. Feeling very blessed and grateful. That's the thing. That's the art, right? Of taking something theoretically, putting it into practice because that's like a whole
Absolutely.
another dimension. And that's what I try to do every time. I try to break neuroscience down to being something applicable for everyone. Like everyone can do it. We don't have to have the education or the fancy background or whatever, It's for everyone, basically.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And there's the funny thing is, like neuroscience, I mean, the human brain is really complex, so it is a complex topic in a sense. But on the other
Absolutely.
hand, like everyone, like we're all operating on our brains. Like this is what drives us. This is what makes us function the way we function. And the more we
Absolutely.
know about it and the more we take that perspective, the more the world all of a sudden makes sense. So I always like to tell the story, and I don't know like whom I stole it from, because this is not my idea, but I always like to tell the story. It's so fascinating that when we go to school, at least over here in Germany, we actually have in classes in school we learn how to brush our teeth, but yet like by now we have like, the medical means to replace the complete teeth, and there's no difference, but we
Hmm.
never learn anything about our mental well-being or our brain, how that works. So that has so much more impact on our lives and so much more impact for our well-being and everything that comes after that, yet we completely don't know anything about it when we leave
Yeah,
school.
when you
So
say it like that,
this
it's
is,
like we always have our brains with us. Of course, our teeth
yeah,
comes with us as well, but it's like, but we're using
sure.
it like most of the day, and the subconscious mind, as we know, it never switches off. So it's like it's always on, and that's why we even more need to understand how we can switch it off sometimes by doing something that calms us down, right? And
Absolutely.
yeah, it should be a subject being taught in school, and it's not only in Germany. I think this is around the
It's
world.
probably worldwide, yeah. But I just
Yeah.
know it from Germany. There I have firsthand experience. Like I never knew how my brain is working until I actually went studying it.
I first got across neuroscience when I was in, university. That is when I was
Same,
introduced to it. That late, I was an adult. Like, what
same.
about? That's
Like
what I'm
all the
saying.
mistakes had been made already. So
Like, okay, yeah, I made so many mistakes, but okay, if you when you fall, you can get up. But then you get
sure.
up with a consciousness, like, okay, I'm doing this because something is off in my frontal lobe. So whatever, you have that understanding. This part of my brain is more highlighted than other parts, but yeah. So, but my girls are actually in the international school, which
Mhm,
is, I think, is the IBM curriculum, is the American
mhm,
curriculum,
mhm.
but it's the same, I think, around the world. So they actually have a play therapist. I'd never heard of
Oh,
it. I know. So a
interesting.
play, yeah, interesting, right? So my daughter got into this. Well, she's not that old, but like she's in PIP and PIP classes, which means before you go to the middle class
Mhm.
level, if you have, yeah. So she has something with some friends, and then they called me and asked if we wanted to have some sessions with a play therapist. And I asked, what is a play therapist? And they tell me, oh, nothing to worry, she will just talk to her and give her some breathing exercises,
Which is
basically do
so
some
important.
mindfulness with her. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, wow, that is amazing. Yes, please. So my
Sure.
daughter now has breathing exercises, journaling,
Wow.
and meditation in her daily routine because of the play therapist. That's
I'm impressed.
amazing.
I'm
Yeah.
impressed. Like I personally, I started like we might get into that a little later on, but um, like I started my journey looking into how can I apply neuroscience apart from basic research, which led me to the position that I'm in right now. But one of the things that I always found really fascinating is how broad you can apply neuroscience. And one of the things that of course immediately come to mind, and I never actually thought about that really, was of course there's neuroscience can tell you a lot about mental well-being, and
Yeah.
that is how I got into breathing exercises when I was probably in my mid 30s or something like that, or
Okay.
early 30s. So I was really late to that game, and I read literature on that, and I was like, hey, that makes completely sense, and it's so helpful. So I started, and I unfortunately I lost that good habit, but I started probably 2 years ago or something like that. Uh, every time before I joined a meeting that I did a 30-second 1 minute breathing exercise, because I mean we all
That's the
went remote.
wonders.
No one saw what I was doing because I'm just
Yeah,
breathing, but it helps so tremendously. And that was the first thing that I gave everyone as advice. Like when you're stressed out, when you're not feeling well, of course there are other things you can do, but to have a quick fix to get out of the situation, just do a breathing exercise, calm down your breathing, calm down your nerves. You'll feel so
absolutely.
much better. So I'm a huge fan of those things. Absolutely.
And they help, and it's such a small thing to implement. So it's funny you mention
Absolutely.
it, because just when we went on the podcast, you said, oh, you look so relaxed, and I told you I'm totally booked today, back to back, but I do put in my small breaks in between
Yeah.
meetings. And it's funny that now that you're saying it, I actually do the breathing before going on
Perfect.
a meeting, because it's like my brain is rebooted. It just calms my nervous system down,
Yeah.
and I do there are different types of breathing you can do. But box breathing is very effectful when you're feeling stressed out or anxious, or you're feeling overwhelmed, which you can when you're like have a very packed schedule. So that helps me a lot. And I just take 4 deep inhale and 4
Hmm.
out, and that's
Yeah.
like enough to reboot me. And I'm ready. It's like shaking yourself, and I'm ready to go for the next person.
And as I
Um,
said, like no one notices. I even did that at the beginning of each meeting because like no one sees it. If you're sitting there and just listening, like
yeah,
this is like
exactly.
there's nothing strange to that, and you can
No.
just do it.
And
It
and
just
what if
feels
they saw
amazing.
you? They'll just be inspired. So like,
Yeah,
who
absolutely.
cares?
So yeah, huge
Right?
fan of that.
Yeah. So there's so many brain hacks that we can actually implement, and that's why I do the podcast. I All my content talks about how we can take something complex and break it down to being something simple.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, to make it like easy and accessible for everyone. And yeah, and I think you know this also in this book, even though it's about neuromarketing in business, but there's so much neuroscience behind it as well, right? Even
Absolutely.
though it's a business book for other businesses, but kind of explaining, well, how we react to emotions, how our senses react. But this could also be applicable for everyone else because we all use our senses, right, all the time. And our
Absolutely.
subconscious mind never switches off. And that's why it's not good to be exposed to screen time before bedtime. We know this, but we still do
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
we're like, I'm sleeping so bad. I wonder why. It's like you have the solution basically in your hand because you're using this, right? So it's like,
It brings me to 2 points that basically probably are the core fundament of who I am and why I operate the way I operate. Like I said before, I think before we started, I said for me it's like I went into studying psychology and then basically through that arrived at neuroscience because all of a sudden for me the world made sense. Like I was able to
mhm,
learn how the brain is functioning, and all of a sudden I was able to understand other people. And
mhm,
like I always say like I'm an expert in basically nothing because I have an understanding of expertise that is like if you are one of the top 3 top 5 people in the world, I don't claim to be that. Like I have a
mhm,
general knowledge of a lot of things, but there's probably nothing where there are not at least 10, 15, 20 people that know more about that or better than that than I am. But for me it's always important like to get back to the neuroscience of the level of how the brain is functioning, and then I can
mhm.
talk about probably everything, because if you understand the brain you understand the human being, and if you understand the human
Exactly.
being you understand the world that we operate in, because it's a human made
Absolutely.
world. So that's why I always say like if I can talk about business because that's how I make my money, I can talk about
Mhm.
mental well-being because that's, well, I also, it's also part of my job, but it's also part of my hobby. I can talk about, I don't know, finances or whatever, and as long as I am allowed to revert back to how the brain's working, how the brain processes information, and how emotions are working, all of those nice little
This is how
psychological
we
things.
talk because we have that, yeah, common
Absolutely,
interest. That's how we will talk, and we could talk for
absolutely.
ages, I think,
and that
together.
and that brings me back to the second thing. Like even when I was a teenager I had in a very unconscious understanding of I'm not working properly if I didn't have a good night of sleep. And by
Mhm,
trial and error I found out that if I don't go to bed before midnight, it doesn't
mhm.
matter how long I sleep, my next day is wasted. So I
Yeah.
take good care that I get to bed
So
before
important.
midnight.
Sleep is like number one, and we just do not prioritize
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like for me, I grew up thinking that sleep is a waste of time because it's like 8 hours of time where you do nothing. And then I learned how
Wow,
the
what a
brain's
high score
working.
you are.
It is like it is. But on the other hand, then I learned how the brain's working, how everything gets reset while you're sleeping, how all your memories are getting consolidated while you're sleeping, how all the hormonal levels are being reset to default while you're sleeping. And I was like, this makes so much sense. Like if I don't have a good 6 7 hours of sleep, then
It's
I'm
the same with
I'm
me.
not the same person. Like
No,
it's
I'm
as simple
rubbish,
as that.
and my work is rubbish, and everything is affected. It's
Absolutely.
like a negative cycle to be caught up in. And it's
Absolutely.
funny because in this Western world, and especially I think in Germany, Denmark, it's very much about eating properly, exercising, which is of course
It is
vital. But
important.
it's like, what about the number one thing no one is speaking about, sleep, right? But it's like keep going, and we have to
Yeah.
do so many things. But it's like if you don't do that thing, it will affect the
Yeah.
other things. You will not lose weight, you will actually gain weight of sleeping
Absolutely.
less, right? And research shows
Absolutely.
this. We sleep less, we gain on weight, we crave more sugar because our brain is working overpower, is being burned
Oh,
kind of.
don't get me started on eating sugar. It's I'm very 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 that's like my one vice. Like eating sweets is terrible.
And that's what
But it's so
people,
true.
and we all tend to do. I can recognize it. I'm not better than other people, even though I
Yeah.
have the knowledge. I'm doing the same things because I'm just as human as everyone else. So when I haven't slept much, I crave sugar. My brain wants it, and I
Yeah.
want it, and I justifying it by saying I need this to keep on going. You know.
There's actually also again a very personal but funny anecdote. Like when I was doing my PhDs, I was regularly in our neuroscience lab where we had an fMRI machine to really measure brain activity. And one of the things that is very crucial for if you run an MRI experiment is before you put the participant into the machine, you measure their body weight so that you know how much energy you can put
Yes,
on
I've
their
done it
body.
too. Yeah.
So, and I was there, like I was researcher, and every time before I used an experiment on participants, I basically practiced it on myself. So I was in there like very regularly, and every time they measured my weight, and I actually didn't look for the numbers, and I never actually cared. But then after like a couple of months, when we had three, four, five experiments in, they looked at my numbers and were like, Benny, within the last 6 months you gained 10 kilograms and lost 10 kilograms again. Like your weight is like going ups and down
I think that's
immensely.
me too.
And I was looking at that, and since that day, I know. So first of all, it doesn't matter how stressed I am. It doesn't matter how much I eat, which is completely correlated. Like the more I'm stressed, the more I'm eating.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it doesn't matter. Like I never have more than like 88 kilograms, and I never, doesn't matter how much I exercise, I never have less than 78 kilograms. So this is like the span that I have, and I never exceed it and never fall below it. So it's that was kind of like my revelation that during that period it was very stressful, but it worked out.
Yeah, so what did that tell you?
Well, first of all, it told me how much everything is connected. Like
Exactly.
like getting stress from work, getting stress from the tasks that you're doing, from your everyday life. Doesn't matter where it comes from. It
Yeah,
affects your sleep. It affects your eating routines. It affects all of that, and completely makes
everything.
sense because the more you're under stress, the more your body needs energy. And whenever you have a source of energy available, you just grab it and don't think about it. So it's
Hmm.
it's just okay. I need to recharge. I need that energy because I don't know when I'll get the next food. Again, it's how our brain is working, how our
Yes.
body is working. It stems back to the old days, basically, when all of that was formed evolutionary. So that is connected, and that then affects also the way you operate. I mean, if you are completely full, or if you are completely lacking sleep, then you just get into that loop of trying to function, trying to get through the day, getting really even more stressed than that. So it's kind of a vicious circle.
Yeah.
um, so that really made me aware that there are some things that I really need to focus on, that I need to slow down, consciously process the information, make an
Yes.
informed decision, and then take back control, basically. But it also showed me, and that's basically the positive note, which I think is very often forgotten, that even though our world around us changed dramatically within the last 20, 30 years, like there's so much, the life is so much more fast paced. We have access to screens like all the time,
Oh
all
yeah.
the entire day. Like when I was growing up, there was nothing like a smartphone. There wasn't even a cell phone. Like when we
I
wanted to
know.
talk
I
to
think
someone on
we
the
are
phone,
almost the same age. It was the same thing with me.
might be like I had to pick up a landline and call someone. So it's
Same.
completely different lifestyle. But, and that's the interesting thing, our bodies are really capable of adapting to those situations. Like even that's what it told me. Even under the worst circumstances, if I'm really stressed out, I know that I can function for an extended period of time without severe consequences. And
Hmm.
I will feel when it gets severe. I have a very good gut feeling of when it's too much. So that is what that basically told me.
Yeah.
That my body is actually like my genetics are built in a way that is very functional, so I don't have to worry too much. My body will take care of a lot of things for me.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's about listening, actually.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
many people tend to ignore that. And what's the cost of that? You become sick, right? Or you get
Absolutely.
depressed, or like, yeah, because I speak to so many different people around the world, and like they're all so anxious because surviving in this Western world where we have so much technology, like we can work so much faster and make so much more money, but people are being more and more depressed now than they ever been before. And what's the reason for that?
Absolutely.
Is because they don't prioritize themselves and they lack sleep or the right nutrition. It's just on being on the go all the time. And even though like people and people are like business wise or financially, when we are, yeah, we are in rich countries obviously, so I'm just talking about those, like they are making more money and people have more living, better living conditions, but still
Than
they are
ever
being
before.
more depressed. It's going the wrong way mental health wise,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And it's really not that much related. Like I'm always so fascinated by the fact that, and this gets really into the fundamentals of how the world is working, but we're basically living in the best of times ever. I mean, you can argue that right now with the war in the Ukraine, oh, like pre-COVID, it might have been a slightly better even than now, but like historically speaking, it's gotten better and better and better. The circumstances got better and better. We live longer, we live healthier lives, we have access to like to knowledge and information like no one ever had in the history of the human race. And despite all these great advantages and advances, like there is mental health is on probably an all-time low. Like there's so many people anxious and depressed and all of that. So there's really no direct causal relationship between the two, meaning that maybe we're looking at the wrong things the entire time. And that is really something that I think about a lot, because I think that if we continue like that, if that trend continues in both directions, then we're basically heading into a direction that is really nothing where we want to go. It's
Exactly.
getting better on the one hand but worse on the other, and we really have to find a way to connect those two again, so that overall it's getting better, that we're getting healthier in also in the mental, like in the psychological realm.
Exactly. And that's why I try to help as many as I can with my knowledge. Like you can also implement this and get that daily dose of happiness back, because many of the people that I talk to, they're high achievers, everything look good on the paper, but
Oh yeah.
inside they're struggling. Like those are
I
my potential clients, and that's like the majority of the world.
like
So
we live in a world, and that really fascinates me, where marketing and pretending to be something or pretending to feel something is that's so prevalent, that's so everywhere, that like you can I actually did that for quite a while. When you get into a meeting and meet someone new, the first thing that happens is you ask, hey, how are you, how do you do, whatever. Give them
mm,
an honest answer, and you'll see that, like, a, they didn't ask to get an honest answer because they're shocked that someone is not feeling like happy and well. And like,
yeah.
truth be
And they don't
told,
know
like,
how to deal with it. They wanted like
exactly,
the common
exactly.
answer. They're like, what? Yes.
I've done that for a couple of months. I like every meeting that I went in, I just gave them an honest answer. When they asked me how are you, I
I
said,
love
well, I'm
that.
pretty tired and stressed out, and like it's not a bad day, but I really would need something, I don't know, whatever. And they were like, oh, this is the first time that I hear that. Can I
Yeah.
help you somehow? Like,
So
it's
basically, we should change the whole corporate culture, because you're in the
sure.
business world like a lot of the time. And I used to be in the business world. I still am a bit in the business world, but I'm mostly working
Well, you're
with.
your own business now, so yes,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
are.
But yes, I'm in both the worlds, if you can
Sure.
say that. Yeah. So how do you think we could actually connect mental well-being more into business? How can we put it more into
Yeah.
business in the corporate
So
world? Because I think there's a need for it, but like no one is
definitely.
actually doing it. Yeah.
Definitely. So there's several things. So the first thing that you already mentioned is high achievers have a they basically have a self image of being indestructible. So
Yes.
like, throw at me whatever you want, nothing will stick. I'll carry through. And this is something that like, this mindset is something that's really hurting people on the long run. It might help you in your career on the short term notice, but if you continue like that, it will definitely hurt you in two ways. First of all, people will start taking that like for real, as a guarantee, and they will start throwing the shit at you, and they will just expect you to manage with it, so you lose your support. That's the one thing. And the second thing is, you'll stop listening to your feelings. Like, you will start to ignore that. And I actually have, like, at when I was we had a project, well, we had several projects on mental well-being and mental health at Deloitte, because what I'm doing, my job there, and also my passion, is actually to look, like, where can you use neuroscience irrespective of the field. Like, it's really, how can you use neuroscience to create value, to create benefit. And one of the very obvious things that we already talked about is mental well-being, is mental health. So we looked
Mhm.
into that, and we looked into how can you use neuroscience technology, neuroscience insights into increasing well-being. And of course, like I can't go into too many details there because there's a lot of confidential stuff in there, and there's a lot of personal experiences, personal data involved in there. So I'll have to stay a little bit superficial. But one of the anecdotes that I really love to tell, because it makes it so tangible, is we ran a study where we actually had people getting hooked up to a chest belt that measured their heart rate variability. So if you're not
Okay.
familiar with that, basically your heartbeat, the way that, like, we know from television, we know, like, medical shows where you get this heartbeat, the ECG signal, which is boom, 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 boom,
Hmm.
and it always looks very monotone. And truth is, your heart adapts. Like, if it's a healthy heart, it adapts to your environment. So it's actually like the beat to beat interval. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower, and that is what we call the heart rate variability. And that is actually a measure of how well your heart and your whole organism is capable of adjusting to the demands that are there in the environment. So the bigger your heart rate variability, the healthier you are, basically. And
Okay.
one of the things that we actually found was we connected people with such a sensor, recorded that throughout the day, and then we had basically one-on-one sessions where we looked into their calendars and basically overlaid the HRV signal and looked at, okay, what were moments that you were really stressed out, and what were maybe even like longer periods where you had issues and stuff like that. And we had one colleague, I'll never forget that. She recorded that for probably something like 2 weeks or something like that. Um, and we had one week where her HRV, like, basically dumped to almost no variability at all. And we looked at that and we're like, okay, this looks as if you were really sick. Like, this is
Oh,
not
wow.
this is not healthy. This is not normal. This is like a really, like, physical disease. And she looked at us and was like, yeah, now that you mention it, I actually didn't feel that well, but I thought, let's just carry through, it'll go away. And I was
Oh,
like, look at
wow.
that. It was probably an entire week where you went to work and you were actually sick. Like, you should have been in bed. And she was like, she looked back at that and looked at her calendar and was like, well, now that I think of it, I actually made some really stupid decisions that week, and now I know why. So this is like,
Exactly.
this is what I mean with everything is connected. So using those neuroscience or physiological measurement methodologies, they can actually, like, I always operate on the assumption that people have a good understanding of their emotions and their feeling, but it's not true. Especially high
No, they
performers
don't. They
tend to
don't.
ignore that and just carry on, and that will lead to the level that you not only ignore it, that you are not even being capable of perceiving it anymore, meaning that you will continue, even if your body actually screams, look, I'm so close to collapsing.
That's
let's
why they
let's take a
burn
break,
out.
let's do
Leaders
something.
burn out. We
Exactly.
hear this all the time.
Exactly.
And then when they are burned out and they even can't move their body, then they take time off. Then they
Absolutely.
react. But the signs have been there from the beginning because the mind body connection is so strong and works together all the time. So
Absolutely.
sometimes people say to me, isn't the body one unit and the mind one unit? It's like, no, they all work together. It's all
That is
correlated.
Descartes' error. I'm so sorry, but it's not true.
Exactly. And this is
Like,
also something I talk a lot about. Like, are you stressed out? How is your gut health? I mean, it's all
yeah,
related. How you been eating is also related to how you're feeling. If you're eating too much sugar, it just goes away quickly. It's not for the long run in the brain. So how you're doing
absolutely.
cognitively when you do that, when you intake the wrong food, it's always working together. And
Absolutely.
that's the sad part that in business people burn out like that. They keep going and going until their body's like, I can't do this anymore,
And
which is
it's really not
sad.
healthy, and it's really not for
No,
the long run. Like I always say, even in, like, when I'm in negotiations, when I'm trying to negotiate business deals or something like that, in the end, we're all humans. Like, it's not a matter of life and death. Yes, it would be great if I win this big project, but wouldn't it even be better if I win a smaller project and then half a year later that client comes back and says, look, I really felt that you cared for me and there was a connection and it worked out nicely. Let's do
Yeah,
another one. Let's do another one. Let's
yeah,
do another one. Isn't
absolutely
that
for the long
isn't that
term. Yeah.
exactly? And that's what I always say. Like, I'm in here for the long run. I'm in here for the long term. Like, I have actually, I have quite a few clients where I said, look, I understand your problem. I know that I can solve it with my technologies and my approach, but I think there are cheaper ways and easier ways for you to do it. So how about you go to them, you go there, tell them your problem. They'll find you something, like they'll fix it within probably a couple of weeks or maybe even days. And then if it reoccurs or if it gets bigger, let's have a discussion again. And
Hmm.
those are the relationships that you build where you actually, like, from human to human, honestly, like with a bit of backbone, tell them, look, this is what I think, this is my perspective. Let me help you, but let's not enforce a project. Let's not enforce something there. That's how I operate, and that's where
That's
I always
beautiful,
like
Benny. I
build the
haven't met
trust.
many like you. Like in
I
business,
fear
it's
there
always
aren't
about
many.
yeah, there are not many. Like always about making the win, no matter the cost. And yeah, and I've been in the corporate world like forever, and I just started my own business. Only been 8 months, but it's like wow. So I can really see all those things now, all the
Yeah.
negative things in the corporate world, how it is, and mental health is not prioritized. I remember this one situation where my colleague died. I had a meeting with him the
Mm.
day before he died, and I was in shock. He just got a
Wow.
heart attack. Yes.
Yeah.
So it happened Saturday. I had the meeting with him Friday, went to work Monday, and I was the content creator. I run the neuromarketing department. I was head of neuromarketing, and I was supposed to tell this to all of the clients and make content on that he passed away. And I know, and no one was speaking. It was like everybody was like looking in their screens. Everybody
Yeah.
was feeling something, but there was this weird feeling like in the
Yeah.
room, right? And then I had to speak up. You know what? This is too hard for me.
Sure.
I'm not sure if I can do this, right? And like,
Absolutely.
and people, and I like, shouldn't we be talking about this? Like having a conversation
Yeah.
about this. And people were like, "Oh yeah, but death is part of life." And it's like I couldn't work that day,
Sure.
and I told my boss I have to leave because I needed time off, and no one was there to consult me,
Yeah.
and not even him. We just had like a 5 minute talk, and I remember I was like, "Wow, how is this like?" Why don't we have something like this in the work environment? People
Yeah.
getting divorced or people getting through personal situations and me losing a colleague, but it was also their colleague. But everybody is different, like processing their emotions. But I was the only one who needed to speak up about it,
Sure.
and no one could actually meet me where I was at. So I had to seek the support from elsewhere.
Yeah.
Um,
That is like, I completely, well, first of all, sorry that you had to go through that. And I completely, like, I always try to be the person that gets both perspectives and try to find the middle ground. So being a manager myself, I can completely, like, I can picture myself being in that situation and just being overwhelmed by that and having
I was
someone
so
talk to me like,
overwhelmed. Yeah.
I need someone to talk to, and me being there like, okay, look, I completely understand that, but I don't have time right now because I got other stuff to do, whatever it might be. So I completely get that there is, it's a very tough situation for everyone involved. And, like, truth be told, if I'm sitting right here, might have been that I would have, if I would have been in the shoes of your manager, I might have been that I would have done the same thing and then really felt bad about it for a week or so and reached out to you and said, look, sorry that we didn't talk about it. But what for me, um, there is, like, I had one teacher at university, Professor Jacobs, who actually was like, guiding me on my PhD, and he said something that will stick with me for the rest of my life. Um, uh, there is, in Germany at least, I'm not sure if it's worldwide like that, but in Germany at least, if you talk about people, or if you talk with people about efficiency and effectiveness, they don't know the difference between the two, and they treat them both as being the same.
Mhm.
And businesses in Germany are run most of the time to be efficient, but trying to be as efficient as possible, they trim down every safe net, every second guard, everything that is basically there for human support, so that they reach the point where they don't become effective anymore because the people within the organizations don't work anymore. And that is something that for me is something when he told me that many people don't know the difference between the two. I completely confess at that moment I was like, yeah, I probably also don't know the difference between the
Yeah,
two.
I was
But
thinking the same right now.
yeah, so
So,
it's very interesting because efficiency basically means you set a goal and then you try to have as little invest as possible to reach that goal, but not go any further. Effectiveness means I also have a goal, but I try to get as far ahead as I can. So
mhm,
basically, the ambition to have a very tangible example, the ambition from the United States to say, look, we want to be the first nation on the moon. To get there, they had to increase their effectiveness as much as
absolutely.
possible.
Yeah.
There was no way that you get to the moon in an efficient way. You had to increase effectiveness and you had to spend millions and millions of dollars, probably billions of dollars, I don't know,
Mhm,
just to get there. Once you are there and once you achieve that goal, you learn so much that you can actually try to trim down the process to make it efficient to get there. That is where we are right now. Like today's spaceships and rockets, they run on way less fuel. They're much more like adjusted to the environment, so it's much easier to get to the moon compared to the first time they went there. Now, knowing that and having that knowledge, we could probably reach for something way further away, but we're not trying to do that. That would be effectiveness, like trying to expand our limits, trying to get where we've never been before. And
mhm,
that is basically the difference between the two. Businesses try to build many businesses at least try to build an operating model, a business model to achieve certain goals, and then once they're there they try to trim down operations to have basically no extra cost to reach their goals. But very
mhm,
often they trim them down to a level that really risks, if something changes in their environment, that they're not effective anymore and thus also not efficient anymore. And that is something that really reminds me of those things. I try, and I'm in no way shape or form perfect in that, but I try as much as I can to really step back from what are the tasks that I need to do right now to reach my goals, and what is the right way to get there. And if I need to go an extra mile to try to make feel everyone involved, try to get all the stakeholders involved, try to like all the stuff that you need to do around that, sometimes that's the right way to do it and it's necessary, and sometimes it's just nice to do it. But I try to do it as often as I can because I know that even the nice way and even getting those people on board, even if I don't have to, um, it on the long run, that will help me. It will come back to me and will have a positive effect on me. So that's kind of the way that I try to operate there. I
I
have
think it
no idea
sounds
how we got to that topic.
we've been talking about a lot of topics, but
That's true.
basically it was about mental well-being in the business sector, what you can do. And there are so many things we can do, all of
Absolutely.
us. Yeah, like acknowledging when something is happening in our body is telling us something. It's kind of like the alarm clock going off, and you have to react and listen to it because we only have this life and tomorrow is not promised. And I tell this to all of my clients: if you don't take action now, it means you are the one who's self-sabotaging yourself, right?
Absolutely.
And it starts with you. You have to love yourself just like you love your spouse or your children. You have to love yourself and then listen to the signs of your body is telling you something, and it's causing you all of this anxiety you're experiencing. And by implementing those small brain hacks like doing breathing, journaling your emotions, those are just some advice.
Yeah.
And exercising on a daily basis, it doesn't have to mean you have to be in the gym for 2 hours, but just going for a
Absolutely.
brisk walk in nature has tremendous effect on our mental well-being,
G-
for our
Get into
brains, right?
reality. Get away from the screens. Get into the
Yes,
reality.
get
Your
out
brain
in
was
nature,
built
move
to
your body.
operate in
That's what I say.
reality.
Move your body, get your pulse up, just go for a brisk walk. You don't have to run or, whatever. Just get out, move your body, basically.
That,
Makes your mood uplifted, right? And you perform better
absolutely.
cognitively as well. Um,
Absolutely. This is probably the number one advice that I give to my students. Like I get asked quite often, like what can I do to make it easier for me to learn stuff? Because they have to learn a lot of like it's
yeah, in
tremendous how much they have to
university.
learn.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um, so the number one thing that I always tell them, look, is of course there are a lot of little tricks and tips that you can get, but the best thing you can do is try to learn while you're physically active. try to just when you go to the gym, like take a podcast of the stuff that you need to learn and listen to it while you're in the gym. If you are on a treadmill, like read something while doing that. I don't know, like try to
That's
combine
pretty
physical
hard
exercise.
though.
Yeah, of course it's like sometimes it's not possible and sometimes like the setup doesn't allow it, but basically if you're physically active, it helps your brain to really absorb the information. It helps you
Absolutely.
to get all of that running. And like if you look at that, that's scientifically proven. Like stuff that you learn while you're physically active gets memorized so much better than everything else. This is always like my number one hack for learning. My number one hack for life is sleep well. So
I
that
think
also
those
helps to
are the best
consolidate it.
brain hacks we can give people out there. So
Absolutely.
where can people reach you, Benny, if they want to come in contact with your work, your knowledge, your books, or where can people find you?
Well, I think that the best thing really is reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's the number one source where I'm active and where I like. I probably shouldn't be saying that, but I respond every request there. Like I'm connected with everyone, even though if I don't know them
That's so
really.
nice because you're
So
nice.
yeah, maybe I don't know. I do have an Instagram account which I use so rarely that it's probably not even worth
Yeah, I would
mentioning. And then
recommend LinkedIn because I did DM him like a month
it's much
ago
better,
and I haven't
absolutely.
seen it yet. So,
Yeah, like I'll have to check that today.
yeah, it's
And then
fine. I didn't say anything. I just said, "Hey, Benny, it's me. Follow me." So it wasn't like an important message, but I think LinkedIn, LinkedIn is fine.
LinkedIn works for sure.
As
Yeah.
because LinkedIn works, and I will drop the link for you all you guys in the description, so you can connect with Benny if you want to. If you want to indulge more in his beautiful work, you can do that. And where can people buy your books?
Oh, as far as I know, like the most recent one, the one that you showed, neuromarketing and business, that's probably available everywhere where you can get books. Like,
Okay.
if you want to do the publisher a favor, buy it directly from the publisher, because then they like basically skip all the retailers. But you can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it wherever is convenient for
Amazing.
you. I have a couple of other books that are rather oldish, and I think they're all in German. So if you're from the German-speaking community, you don't even have to buy Neuromarketing Business. There's the German predecessor of it, which was called Neuromarketing in der Praxis, which is basically just the German way of
Ich
saying
verstehe ein bisschen Deutsch.
Neuromarketing Business. Yeah, perfect. So
I'm from Denmark, so
and it's basically the same content. Like we switched some chapters, but it's basically the same thing. So you don't need. Please don't buy both books. That would be a waste of
no,
money.
that's stupid. Yeah.
And yeah, and then there's some old books of mine which are pretty much outdated. So if you're interested in the stuff that I'm doing, it's really those two probably. And then if you're really interested in customer centricity, there's a book that recently was, I think it was published 1st of February this year, so it's really fresh. It's called
Okay.
Customer Centricity. It's also within Springer. A colleague of mine, Neil Westling, together with me and some other colleagues, we've written one chapter on a very nice business use case that we had a year ago. So I'm
Okay.
pretty proud of that one. And like easiest thing is always reach out, like contact me directly. I try
Yeah.
to answer to everything that I get, and yeah, take it from there.
I think that's amazing. And thank you so much for coming on. Such an honor to get
Thanks
your
for having
knowledge.
me. It's really an
Yeah, of
honor
course.
to have me to be here.
Oh, thank you. And it's been amazing talk. I think for those in business can really relate to this, and also for those who are not in the business world can still relate to it because mental health is the same wherever
It is.
whatever we are doing basically. So yeah, there are some brain hacks we can implement, and it does not require much. It's just about habits basically. The
Absolutely.
fundamentals of everything is good habits and being consistent that brings in results, on the long term. And I know our brains want the instant gratification, and in this times that we live in, we kind of used to the instant dopamine hit, and it's getting harder to do the things that are delayed gratification. It's harder for
It
us
is.
as humans today. And that's why I think basically that's why we're so anxious, because we kind of want the hit all the time. um,
I don't know who told me that, but someone, and I think it's like common knowledge out there, but someone once said to me, look, if it's easy to achieve something, it's not worth trying to achieve it. I
yes.
think that's basically the gist of it. And so yeah, try to go for the hard stuff and be like as you said, be consistent, be endurant.
Yeah.
That's
And
all you need.
sometimes it feels uncomfortable because your brain is
It
not
does.
used to it.
It does.
Exactly. And our brain likes to keep us in that, in the safe spot all the time. So it's like, get out of your safe, try it. And what do you have to lose? I mean, if you were miserable, you might become more happy, and that's a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
So
And as I said, like your physique, your body is capable of enduring so much. Like that's really what I
yeah.
learned. There the limits that you think you have today, they're probably not even inside of the actual limits. Like you can do a lot if you're a human being living now. That's you can really
I
do a
always
lot.
say this, now that you're saying this, and we're going to end this episode, it's like you can do anything you put your mind to. But of course, it takes,
Absolutely.
you can, but you have to put in the work. Of course, you have to like work together with your body.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
everything is achievable. Yeah. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Benny, for coming on. We'll drop the links, and this podcast will be released to Spotify and Apple, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.